My name is Lisanne MEULENDIJKS and I'm a student in Agro and Ecosystems Engineering, and I'm also the Vice President of Communication of ES. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak here and represent students. EIS stands for the International Association for Students in Agricultural and Related Sciences. We are the largest student association in our field, and we're already established almost 60 years ago. Now we have members in over 40 countries. Our aim is to promote the exchange of experiences, knowledge, and ideas among students in the field of agriculture and related sciences. I'm with you here these 3 days to give the students a voice in a discussion that was addressed so well this morning. In the coming minutes, I will share with you the student view on the attractiveness and the employability of agriculture and related sciences. Some aspect that came already back this morning also in some questions. In discussions about future food security, it has become extremely popular to mention the big numbers all of us already know. By 2050, there will be more than 9 billion people and they all need to eat. And of course, I could have chosen to start my presentation in a more original way, but no. Especially in my case, in the student case, it's important to once more repeat those numbers. And why? Because we, the students from now, will actually be the ones who will be actively working in the field of agriculture by 2050. We are the ones who will have to cope with these big numbers. And all of us in our field will indeed try to meet this highly increased food demand. But it's something we cannot achieve if we're with too few. So that's why it's important to think of the fact why not too many students are currently interested in studying agriculture. Let's have a look at the factors that determine the choice of study for a student. Firstly, and most obviously, the study must be interesting. But there's some other factors that have an influence as well, like the university. How is the attractiveness and the ranking? And in which kind of city is the university situated? And of course, also the future job has an influence. What will be the social status like if I will end up studying in this field? Or how are the salaries like, and thus will be my level of comfort? And how is the job security? Are there many jobs available? These are all relatively obvious factors, but there's one more factor that has an influence that is less obvious, though should not be underestimated. It's a factor that distinguishes my generation, also called the millennial generation, from the previous ones. Our generation has as the most important value that they seek in a job is that they want to do meaningful work. This is often underestimated by employers who offer jobs who think that for us it's most important to have a high income. So it's interesting to look to what extent can the field of agriculture match this important value for my generation. But let me first start with a case example to explain easier, more clear to you what actually the problem is that we're currently facing. We go back 5 years in time. We're in my high school. The school has organized a career event in the evening. Speakers from all kinds of sectors were invited to come and tell about their future job. It's something that could help us in choosing our study next year. One of the speakers was announced as an entrepreneur. The class was full. There were even kids standing in the back. Everyone wanted to hear about this cool guy and about this cool job. Then the entrepreneur entered the room. It was not really that kind of entrepreneur the students had expected. Do you realize this speech is about agricultural entrepreneurship? The guy said. A wave of disappointment went through the room. No one did realize this. The guy saw the disappointment and said, "Hey, you can still leave if you're not interested. There's so many speeches tonight. Go out and check out some other presentation if you would prefer that." That was not a too wise comment. The whole class got an action, leaving the man only with 3 students left in his room to give a speech about entrepreneurship, agricultural entrepreneurship. Why did this happen? Why did all these kids walk away? What is it that none of the students wanted to listen about agriculture? It is important to address the factors that make the agricultural sector less interesting than other sectors. So, on the hand of this case example, we can conclude that we have to tackle the problem of not enough students that are interested in the field of agriculture on 2 levels. Firstly, we have to start on the level that from the beginning on, when a speech would have been announced as agricultural entrepreneurship, this room would have been full with students as well, just like for a normal entrepreneur. This happens when there is a more general interest in the sector and students are open to inform themselves more about the possibilities there are in our sector. And when we have this class full, then comes the second step. For those remaining in the class who are willing to hear the information about agriculture, we need to actually convince them that they will end up studying it as well and don't choose for something else. How did I analyze these 2 layers on which we have to tackle the problem? I talked to several students of our International Student Association and interviewed them with several questions. And furthermore, I had some personal contact with university who provided me some data, and I did some research. The students came literally from all over the world, representing both developing and developed countries, and coming literally from every continent. With the students, I discussed topics that could address the fact that at this moment, agricultural science is not so popular. Of course, their answers were quite diverse in some cases, but it was also interesting to see that there were quite some consensus worldwide. The questions I asked them were divided into 4 topics, and you can find exact questions in the map you got. But the main topics were social status and the awareness about society, about the increased food demand that is necessary. It was about the curriculum and the quality of their curriculum, the extracurricular opportunities they have at their university, and some other aspects. The thing that became completely clear from the beginning on when I had the interviews is that our sector is facing an image problem. With the current image, high school students are just not interested and not open to inform themselves about agriculture, and thus won't end up studying it either. So let's have a look at the image and how it's perceived by students. So look at the current image. I asked the students about the awareness of the world food problem, that we need to increase our production so much within a few years. Unfortunately, only those countries who were facing food security problems themselves, or recently have been facing food security themselves, mentioned that there was some kind of awareness in their society about this fact. Interesting thing that can be concluded from this was that also those were the countries where students in agriculture had relatively a high social status. Also, a higher level of students on high school were interested in studying agriculture. And what could be the reason for this? I think one of the aspects is that in those countries there is higher awareness of the importance of agronomy to daily life. In those countries, for someone, agronomy can mean the difference between going to bed hungry or well fed. On the other hand, in the developed countries, most students mentioned that their social status wasn't high, and they were seen as the uncool ones at their university. Some even mentioned that it happened quite often that they had to defend their choice of study among families and friends who were not working in the field, because they thought, those family and friends asked, why don't you study a higher degree? You're smart enough. It's really sad, but it shows clear the misperception that currently is present in our field. There were some exceptions on the fact that the agricultural students weren't found to be cool, because the first case was in Latin America, where the interviewed students came from private universities where a relatively high amount of students was from a big ranch or latifundia, and that increased their higher social status. And the second thing is that some of the studies, which were called agronomy engineering or bioscience engineering, they also had a relatively higher social status, the student mentioned, because the engineering parts give a certain esteem in society. So that was how the students viewed their image themselves. But let's have a look at how the media gives us the image of agriculture. We can do this on hand of these two extremely popular series. Suits is a series from the US, and Farmer Wants a Wife was a series started in the Netherlands, but now broadcasted in over 15 countries, and has the highest numbers of viewers every week again in the Netherlands. So, they are both extremely popular, but there are huge differences in their main characters. Let's start with Suits. Those main characters are lawyers. They are very self-confident, arrogant, and good-looking, and dressed in a suit always. And on the other hand, we have Farmer Wants a Wife. Those main characters are the farmers who look for a wife, and they're mostly shy and clumsy, and preferably all the time dressed in a dirty overall. So what is the reason why they are popular? In Suits, it's the fact that all the youth who watches that series really want to be like those persons. They're so cool and so confident. In Farmer Wants a Wife, it's the opposite. We feel sympathy for the poor farmer who cannot find him a job and looks so clumsy. So what would you do if you were a high school student and the media was the main factor that influences your image? So let's have a look at the reasons why this image is so unfavorable for our sector. Firstly, something which we cannot change but is the truth is that agriculture is bound to rural environments, at least most of it. Of course, there's some urban farming coming up, but the majority will stay in rural regions. Cities, on the other hand, can attract youth with many opportunities and activities. There's excitement in cities which rural environments doesn't have. Today it's popular to be called a job, young urban professionals. GRPs, young rural professionals, they don't exist. The second reason why this image is like that is that the look that is associated with agriculture is in general less attractive. The main perception in society that directly is related to agriculture is farming. And a farmer is associated with dirty and smelly work, hard work. And of course, then when you compare it with lawyers who wear a court suit, or even something silly as a white coat that wears a doctor, the farming is less attractive. And thirdly, and I think it might have the strongest influence on the current image, is that agriculture has no strong link with science. And this has two aspects. From its very beginning on, 10,000 years ago, agriculture didn't start as a scientific practice. It was something that was improved by trial and error, and the best techniques were repeated, but no science was involved there for many years. On the other hand, other popular studies started with the base of science. And secondly, even that lack of input of science into the agricultural sectors continues nowadays. When you don't have any education and you cannot find another job, the only thing you will do is, and the only way to survive is to become a subsistence farmer. The fact that agriculture has been a sector, but still can be a sector in which no level of education is needed, influences its image, also the scientific part of the sector. This is also shown by this data that where a group of respondents who are agricultural students compared to a peer that are not directly involved in the agricultural sector. You can see that the peers clearly think that little education is needed in the field of agriculture. Next to that, they also think that the diverse career opportunities are very low. This matches with the fact that agricultural sector is directly linked to a farmer, not to those other jobs in the agricultural sector. So how do we improve the image? First of all, we need to promote the important role of agriculture more. Today, food comes from the supermarkets. It doesn't come from the fields. And that's why it also has lost its link with agriculture. We should make people more aware of the fact that agriculture is the reason that they eat every day. Emphasizing this fact will increase the awareness on the sector and therefore also increase the image. Secondly, we have to promote different jobs, and not only the farmer which forms the current image, but also the researchers and the agronomists that are working in our fields. When you Google agronomist, this is what you find in pictures. That already looks a whole lot more appealing than the pictures you will find when you Google just a farmer. So if we broaden up the image, also the image will improve. And thirdly, we need to promote the big facts. As all of us here know, we have highly challenging tasks that we're facing. But the rest of society isn't aware of that, like the students also mentioned in the interviews. If we come back to the meaningfulness that we want to do in a job, agricultural sector is exactly the place where you can do this work, because the challenges are so high that you really can contribute to this increasing food demand. All these three factors come down to one thing. There is just not enough understanding about the agricultural sector, and there should be more knowledge in society about the role of agriculture. And how can we teach the rest of society about the agricultural sector that's improving the image in the media? The interviewed student mentioned that many of the universities are already actively trying to improve this image because they're aware of this bad image. But the problem is that universities, they reach out to students and to people related to the universities, but not directly to all other people in society, though that other group is much more important to reach. That's why I say it's also important that governments take responsibilities in this. There's an example that Wageningen University in the Netherlands publishes every week on the main newspaper on the front page an advertisement of one of their achievements in science of that past week or past period. And this is a way that reaches the whole society, and which indeed also increase the awareness of the importance in agronomy. Yes. So okay, if we've worked on our image, then we have our classroom full of students who want to know more about agriculture and are interested in it. Then we're at the point that we need to convince them to actually choose for the study agriculture. One of the factors that has an influence on this is the employability. Let me look at the students' view and the data. There was a worldwide consensus about the employability in our sector. All the students mentioned that they feel confident to find a job after graduation. One of them mentioned so nicely, our job will only be gone when people stop eating. That's true, of course. But let's have a look if the data says the same. I start with some examples from Spain and Belgium, Poland and USA. In Spain, this article says that 95% of all graduates from Politécnica de Madrid of agricultural engineers found a job within 1 year after graduation. And it also says that it's one of the jobs with the highest rate of employment in times of crisis. This is something really important in a country where youth employment is relatively high. And Belgium. Belgian figures look similarly. This graph says that bioscience engineering has only 94% of the students who graduate from bioscience engineering found a job within 1 year after graduation. That's higher than average of all graduates in all sciences. This data I got from the Warsaw University. They sent me this data, and here also again you can see that this is data from all their graduates, and they're 94% graduated within 1 year. But again, the agriculture-related studies come out better. And now the most clear, most striking example, I think, is an example from the US. These bars show the amount of available jobs in the US in our sector. The lower bars show the amount of qualified students for those jobs. It's clear, almost only half of the jobs can be filled with qualified students. So we have seen 4 times favorable numbers for the agricultural sector. It's just that high school students are not much aware of these factors. So it's just a thing that we need to promote this positive aspect more. Another aspect that plays a role in convincing students to study agriculture after they have shown interest in the sector is the quality of the education. About the curriculum, I won't go too deep in it because some of you will go into that later. And also it's very depending on the university and the study students are doing. But one thing I would like to share with you is a general opinion of the students that they think a high quality curriculum is alive. It should not be something that is taught for years and years in the same way. No, it should include new topics, especially in our field, where there's so much discussion going on in public debate, with sometimes peculiar statements made about GMOs and about biological farming, that students want to have a scientific background to be able to join this public debate in a good way. Another aspect that plays a role in the quality of education is the extracurricular opportunities they have during their studies. With that I mean the opportunity to do an internship or attend seminars, weeks, if there are guest lectures and stuff like that. All the students once more agreed on this topic, and that was that they agreed on the fact that it increases the engagement with the study. I must say, since the students come from our International Student Association, and most of them take actively part in the extracurricular activities that we organize, they might be a bit biased, but still their answers are very positive. They say, it was a positive surprise to me, and you get directly involved with what you do. And I must say myself, the past year I've seen coming around so many great opportunities for students in our field to attend conferences and events, not only organized by the students themselves or by universities, but also by other organizations that try to involve students in how to feed the world together. These are just some examples of what came by past year. But again, once more, the problem is that high school students are not aware of these great opportunities. Improving the attractiveness is just a way of marketing. I have one more aspect that plays a role in the quality of education, and it's the affordability. I have a personal example for this. This here is Elizabeth. She's a Kenyan friend of mine, and she wanted badly to study agronomy in Kenya at the university. The only problem was that she couldn't afford it, which is not so strange in a country where the per year capita is lower than a yearly tuition fee. And she has a subsistence farmer background, so it was impossible. Then we looked to start for grants together, but already soon it became clear that she wasn't eligible for any of the grants with a girl from her background. The thing is that in countries where there might be a high interest of students studying agriculture, they also need to be able to study that, and money shouldn't hamper them. So this case in Kenya, but also in other countries, there should be enough grants available for qualified students who really want to study in the field, so that they at least can help to increase food security. So let's go back to the classroom. First, we want to get this classroom full, and we will do that by improving the image. And then, on the second part, we want to convince the students in that classroom that they actually start studying agricultural sciences. And that we do on the hand of having a good employability and a high quality of education. To improve the image, we need to create awareness of the important role agriculture has to one's daily life. Secondly, we need to distinguish between the jobs that are present in the field of agriculture and not only promote the farming jobs. And thirdly, we need to spread the big numbers. It's not only the task of universities to do this, but also government should take some responsibility in this. And then, the employability and the extracurricular opportunities in our field are both very positive. It's just the fact that we need to create more awareness about this so that students, high school students, know their great possibilities and indeed want to start studying it. So we have a good product, we only need to sell it better. Thank you very much.